Welcome to the Razor Grid's end of month review for the month of May. So we've got a few things to talk about this week, lots of great news, and an exclusive interview with the writers and director of a film currently in development, Retrograde Future. So first and foremost, let me start by saying thank you to everyone listening, streaming, downloading this show. And again, I gotta thank some of my Australian and Korean peeps for checking out the show. It's awesome to see folks outside the US enjoying the Razor Grid and these awesome soundtracks. Thanks for tuning in. This month we had Demon Hunter, Castlevania, Symphony of the Night, and Tremors. Castlevania seems to be pretty popular with most of you, so I'll make sure to tap into that franchise in the future. But for now, let's slip into some music that's caught my ear this month. First, let's look into Midnight Fighter's newest project, Night Visions. This came out right at the tail end of April. It was a very, very enjoyable effort, and I'm going to play a quick cut off of Night Visions titled Dark Racer for you guys. Another project to look out for is the Storm City EP by Cloud Battalion, which was also one to look into, plus the cover art is just too good. And this is a quick cut off of their EP called High Octane. Lastly, from new face Cameron Lee Cooper comes a track that gives off a very never-ending story, childlike vibe called Adolescence. He seems to be pretty new on the scene, at least from what I've been able to see, but if that's any indication, he might be doing some great stuff in the near future. So keep an eye out for this guy. That's Cameron Lee Cooper. And once again, this is a track called Adolescence. Links for these projects will be in the description, so please go ahead and take a look at those. Also, if you're working on some synth tunes or other electronic music, hit me up online for your chance to be included in this segment. Now, let's jump onto my patented arcade news machine. Earlier this month, we got news that Sylvester Stallone is coming back with Rambo 5. For those paying attention, we last saw John Rambo playing in the jungle back in 2008, absolutely annihilating Burmese pirates. This time, the script calls for Rambo going up against Mexican cartels. What? Improbable? Sure. But does it sound crazy cool? Absolutely. The film is slated to release in 2019. John Wick Chapter 3 is on its way, and I'm stoked for this entry of the franchise. And the first two films have been an amazing ball of violence and bloody fun, and I'm hoping this chapter finally has our hero limping away into a life of peace and puppies. The working title for the sequel is Parabellum. Apart from the new title, we got some new actors joining the bloodbath: Halle Berry, Angelica Houston, Mark Dacascos, along with stars from the Raid films Yayan Ruhian and Sisset Arif Rahman. And for anyone who watched the Keanu Reeves directed feature film Man of Tai Chi, lead actor Tiger Hu Chen will also now be part of Wick 3. And the hits just keep coming. Whether you hated or enjoyed the previous Doom film is neither here nor there, as Doom is coming back with a brand new film, straight to video from the looks of it, but it's still great news nonetheless. There's also a decision to make the movie's lead a female. Pretty awesome, with actress Amy Manson, who some of you might know from Torchwood, Casualty, and the show Once Upon a Time, where she plays Merida. Fighting her way through monsters. But more news on this film will be emerging in time, and I'll be making sure to cover it. So in more game-to-film adaptation news, Milla Jovovich, star of the Resident Evil franchise, is set to star in another Capcom property with the film version of Monster Hunter. It's hard not to be familiar with this franchise, as it's been in existence since 2004. Paul W.S. Anderson, who's been directing his wife Milla for most of the last franchise, will also be back to do so again for Monster Hunter. The plot seems a little odd to me though, as reports say the film will circle around the idea of the Monster Hunter world bleeding into ours, and of course causing chaos. I'll reserve judgment until I know more. Neil Blomkamp has become my favorite director of the modern-day sci-fi film, with District 9, Elysium, Chappie, and a slew of Great Oats shorts on his YouTube page. He's demonstrated that he has an eye for original, brutal, and very cool ideas that feel fresh in this day and age. Well, he's coming back for what is being labeled as a disaster thriller with Greenland. Chris Evans is to star in the film after his last run as Captain America in Avengers 4, and Greenland will possibly hit theaters in 2020, though there isn't enough information to go with as of yet. But as a fan of both Blomkamp's vision and Evans' presence, this might be something I can look forward to. But what do you guys think? More 80s nostalgia headed our way with what could possibly be a sequel to one of my favorite fantasy films of that era. Ron Howard says there is currently discussion on a sequel to the 1988 classic Willow. Warwick Davis, whom some of you younger folks might know from the Harry Potter films or maybe even the Leprechaun franchise, starred in this fantastic film along with a much younger, much thinner Val Kilmer. The film follows a dwarf/father/magician on a journey to end the evil reign of Queen Bavmorda, while protecting Elora Danan, a newborn human child. The film was wonderful and full of so many great scenes, and this is just talk, however, but hopefully we'll hear more in the coming months. Chris Pratt isn't done being a household name just yet. With Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and the Jurassic World films, he's been keeping busy adding his brand of cool to anything he touches, and now he has his eye on a new property. Wait for it. Cowboy Ninja Viking, based on the Image comic of the same name. If you're not familiar with the comic book, check it out online for details, as the character seems pretty odd and wacky, but seems like it's really like a far-off stretch from other comic book heroes out there right now. But I guess that seems to be its appeal for the moment. The movie is said to be filming pretty soon. David Leitch, director of Deadpool 2, John Wick, and Atomic Blonde, is bringing about another video game to film adaptation with The Division. For those unfamiliar with the game, it's a cross of action with RPG elements in an open world, based in New York City in the not-too-distant future during a smallpox outbreak. The game was developed by the amazing people at Ubisoft. Great company, by the way. Apparently, big-name talent is already on board, as Jessica Chastain and Jake Gyllenhaal are already signed to the film. David Leitch seems pretty excited about the film and the, quote, complex questions the game has asked, making for an intriguing story. But I guess we'll see. Finally, after so many decades of waiting, hoping, and praying to the nerd gods, we're getting the long-awaited Boba Fett film. James Mangold, the man behind Logan, is taking the reins on this film after Josh Trank dropped out a few years back. I'm very curious to know how this will play out, though. Will it be a full-on prequel, or will we see the Fett sometime after the Sarlacc pit scenario? Let's be honest, that was such a cruddy way to go for such a dope character. I'm curious to know where exactly the story will go. Needless to say, I'm excited to see what direction they take with this film, with, of course, this being about one of the most notorious bounty hunters in the universe. Last but not least, we were hit with a surprising announcement of Rage 2. Now, I haven't gotten around to playing the original game, which is staring me in the face at the moment, but I'm interested in it due to what I've heard about it, and I've always loved the post-apocalyptic setting, and the sequel seems to be much more colorful than the original. It seems that the folks at Bethesda thought the franchise needed new life. They seem to have a pretty decent track for making some brutal, bloody, and very fun games. I'll be playing the original pretty soon, and I'm actually looking forward to getting my hands on the sequel as soon as possible. Damn, that was a lot going on last month. But that is the end of our news segment. So recently, I reached out to the fine folks at Final Film, who are currently in production of an awesome new film titled Retrograde Future. I mentioned this film during the last month in review show, and this week we got some exclusive information about the film, the company, and the soundtrack. On coming up with the project, writer-director Chris Stratton says that he had always wanted to create movies for the majority of his life. Due to his love of film, he started his career as an editor and cameraman during his time at a university. It was around this time that the retro synth movement was beginning to find some steam and find its way into his ears. The music led to an idea of creating some humorous shorts of a police duo kicking ass in the future to the great synth sounds of Laserhawk. This short was an early prototype for what later became Retrograde Future. The Final Film studio brand was created early on, once Stratton found himself among other like-minded individuals who seemed to share a love for these ideas, but just as importantly, had the skills to pull it off. Not long after that, Stratton met up with Mike Benshaw, a writer and blogger who shared interest in creating the project. Benshaw had always enjoyed writing, but had wanted to adapt his skill to films. Once he was provided the opportunity, the idea for Retrograde Future took off, and the two started working on taking the idea to grander scales. Ben Shaw loved the concept, the energy, and the characters, and envisioned something bigger. They took to expanding on the concept they already had and went forward with the buddy cop action idea that was inspired by films such as Lethal Weapon, with the brutality of RoboCop and a grit seen in films like Escape from New York. Soon after they began work on their idea, the Kickstarter for Kung Fury began receiving heavy attention. Witnessing its successful Kickstarter campaign, they quickly realized the love and attention these projects can receive. This gave them the extra push to realize their own ideas. The Retrograde Future Kickstarter is now live, and you can watch a sweet 2-part trailer on the site as well. The aesthetic looks great. The film, as you'd expect, looks wonderfully cheesy in the best way possible. The film's soundtrack, also incredible. They brought on some great retro synth acts to be a part of the experience, such as, let me see here, Wolf and Raven, Meteor, Ogre, Midnight Danger, Irving Force, Flash Arnold, Mega Hit, Crockett, and Dance with the Dead. Hell of an impressive list. There are currently plans to enter the new trailer into short film and trailer festivals to prove what can be accomplished on a shoestring budget. If Retrograde Future can accomplish its Kickstarter goals, the guys over at Final Film are planning on entering their film in the festival circuit as well. There are no talks yet about a physical release of the film, as they are focusing all their energy on getting the project funded first. Upon release, they do hope they can get their film on streaming services such as Netflix. The link to their Kickstarter will be in the description, where you will be able to see the 2-part trailer right now. And part 2 of the trailer gives us the film's theme song. The song is produced by Wolf and Raven, with lyrics by Chris Stratton. The vocalist, who I haven't quite put my finger on yet, came together with the idea in place, and what we got in the end is Stratton's vision of the cheesy 80s theme songs that introduced some of his favorite Saturday morning cartoons. Needless to say, they were incredibly happy with the resulting sound. They sent me the track to preview for your enjoyment. Here's a snippet for the theme song for Retrograde Future, produced by Wolf and Raven. Although the future is not yet completely clear, the folks at Final Film are looking forward to creating some new ideas, which Stratton is not yet ready to talk about. When asked about their dream project, Stratton has a strong interest to create a film on the manga Cyber City Odo 808, which takes me back to the 90s. That was a good pull. Mike Benshaw, on the other hand, would love to have his hand in the live-action Mask Crusaders film. The Kickstarter is currently live, and you still have a few days to back the project, and you have a couple of options of pledge rewards, such as physical copies of the film poster, a digital soundtrack, as well as having your name in the credits of the film. Tons of fantastic stuff. So take a minute out of your day to check out their Kickstarter for more information, and once again, the link is in the description. Once again, we come to the end of our show. I'd like to give a huge thank you to Chris Stratton and Mike Benshaw for this exclusive. And don't forget to follow the Razor Grid on all social medias. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes. The show can also be found on Podbean, Stitcher Radio, as well as the CastBox app. That's it for this episode of the Razor Grid, and we'll see you next week with a new show, another great soundtrack. Adios, amigos.